The first thing everyone learns about humans is that they don't act like they're supposed to. The second thing everyone learns is that this makes them deeply unsettling. The station was built for intimidation. High ceilings. Cold lights. Platforms raised just enough that everyone had to look up at someone. Every species there understood posture as language. Height meant rank, distance meant threat, closeness meant dominance. You could tell who was in charge without a single word being spoken. Then the human arrived and ruined the whole system by slouching into his chair like it was a break room and not an interstellar negotiation chamber. He didn't loom. He didn't bare teeth. He didn't puff up or flatten his ears or flare anything that could be flared. He just sat there, one leg crossed, one hand scrolling through a data pad, the other wrapped around a cup of steaming brown liquid that smelled faintly bitter and inexplicably comforting. Across from him stood the Vulpine envoy, tail stiff with irritation, ears angled sharply forward. Her species did not slouch. Her species did not sit unless they were claiming something. Her species certainly did not ignore challenges. "You are deliberately disrespecting me," she said, voice sharp and perfectly enunciated. The human didn't look up right away. He took a sip first. A long one. Then he sighed, the sound of someone who had been awake too long and was on their third cup of questionable coffee. "Sorry," he said mildly. "Was that the tone where I'm supposed to be scared, or the one where I nod politely?" A ripple went through the observers. Several species recoiled. One translated that sentence 3 times to make sure it wasn't a threat. The Vulpine envoy's tail flicked. Once. Twice. That tail had ended skirmishes on border worlds. "I am not attempting to frighten you," she snapped. "I am establishing position." "Oh," the human said. "Cool. I'm establishing lumbar support." That earned him a look like he'd just insulted her ancestors. Her people were proud. Predatory. Their dominance rituals were studied in xenology courses under the heading Aggressive Proximity as Authority. They stepped closer to subordinates. They invaded space. They made others uncomfortable until the hierarchy settled naturally. So she stepped closer. The human leaned back a little to give her room, not out of fear but courtesy, the way you did when someone was standing too close in a line. "That was wrong. That was very wrong. You misunderstand," she said, lowering her voice. "I am not your pet." Several translators hiccuped at that. He finally looked up, eyebrows raised, expression puzzled rather than threatened. "Okay," he said. "Did someone suggest that?" She snarled softly and, without breaking eye contact, climbed directly into his lap. The chamber froze. For her people, this was unmistakable. Physical claim. Territorial assertion. She had chosen her position and dared him to contest it. This was how alphas were challenged and thrones were taken. Her weight, her warmth, her presence, this was dominance made undeniable. She waited for resistance. For flinching. For panic. For submission. The human blinked. Then he shifted slightly, careful and unhurried, so his cup wouldn't spill. He said. "Just so you know, the chair squeaks if you lean too far left." That was it. No shove. No gasp. No frantic attempt to reclaim personal space. He didn't even raise his voice. Around them, alien diplomats scrambled. Data feeds spiked. Cultural emergency flags lit up across half the chamber. One analyst fainted. The Vulpine envoy's ears twitched. This was not how this was supposed to go. "You are permitted to protest," she said quietly, confusion leaking into her tone. "I'm good," he replied. "But if this is a dominance thing, you might want to know my species mostly uses chairs for sitting, not symbolism." Her tail flicked again, slower this time. "You are remarkably calm for someone being claimed." He shrugged, the motion subtle beneath her. "I've been claimed by worse. My cat does this every evening." That word translated poorly. Several species panicked anyway. She shifted her weight deliberately, testing. He adjusted instinctively, not to dislodge her but to balance them both, one hand steadying the data pad, the other bracing against the armrest. It was practiced. Comfortable. Like he'd done this before and survived. You are not asserting ownership, she said. Nope. You are not challenging me. Nope. You are not uncomfortable. He considered that for a moment. I mean, my leg might fall asleep, but emotionally? Nah. This was catastrophic. Dominance required reaction. Submission required acknowledgement. What did you do with a species that responded to a power move by checking circulation? Observers whispered. Notes were taken. A new classification draft began forming quietly in the background. The Vulpine envoy scowled. I chose this position to demonstrate independence. And I respect that, he said. You want a coaster? The condensation's kind of aggressive. Her ears flattened, not in anger this time, but something closer to disbelief. You are supposed to feel smaller, she muttered. He smiled faintly. Not smug. Not predatory. Just tired and amused. Funny thing about humans, he said. We don't really measure ourselves that way. She studied him then, really studied him. No tension in his shoulders. No quickened breath. No instinctive dominance display. Just warmth. Stability. A heartbeat steady enough she could feel it even through fabric and fur. Unintentionally, she relaxed. That was worse. Across the chamber, an elder delegate whispered. The human remains unmoved. Another replied. No. The human remains supportive. The words spread fast. The Vulpine envoy straightened, suddenly aware that she had not won, but neither had she lost. She had chosen, and he had allowed, and the galaxy had no framework for what that meant. I am still not your pet, she said more firmly now. He nodded. Never thought you were. She stayed where she was anyway. Somewhere in the station's database, a new note was added under humanity's file. Warning, do not attempt dominance rituals involving comfort. Results unpredictable. The human took another sip of his coffee, glanced at the ticking negotiation timer, and sighed. Whenever you're ready, he said gently. We can get back to saving the galaxy. Just try not to steal my chair. It's kind of my favorite. And for the first time since arriving, the Vulpine envoy didn't argue. Silence settled into the chamber like a held breath, the kind that made translators hum nervously and diplomatic aides suddenly find urgent reasons to stare at their screens. The Vulpine envoy remained exactly where she was, tail draped with deliberate care, posture rigid enough to signal intent but relaxed enough to feel wrong. Not wrong to her, precisely. Wrong to everyone else watching. The human shifted again, slow and careful, adjusting his balance the way someone did when holding something fragile. Or heavy, or both. It wasn't possessive. It wasn't dismissive. It was practical, and somehow that unsettled her more than if he had tried to move her. You are adapting, she said, narrowing her eyes. Occupational hazard, he replied. Humans are good at carrying things that don't belong to us. That is not reassuring. He smiled. It's not meant to be. Her tail flicked, brushing against his knee. That alone sent several nearby species into quiet panic. Contact like that was escalation. Intimacy. Ownership. The human's response was to nudge his data pad higher so it wouldn't slip. You are treating this as normal, she said. I treat most things as normal, he answered. Cuts down on stress. That was another problem. Stress was the point. Her people cultivated it. Pressure revealed weakness. Yet here he was, heartbeat steady, voice even, shoulders loose, like she'd settled into a piece of furniture that politely refused to acknowledge it was being tested. Across the chamber, whispered analysis began to stack like unstable crates. He has not yielded. He has not challenged. Is this confidence? No. It's worse. The Vulpine envoy leaned forward slightly, just enough to bring her face closer to his. This was a maneuver that had ended fights before they began. Predators backed down when space was taken. Prey froze. Rivals tensed. The human glanced up, met her eyes, then glanced back down again. Hey, he said mildly. Just checking, do your people need eye contact for dominance, or is this more of a vibe thing? Her ears twitched sharply. You are being intentionally difficult. Unintentionally, he corrected. I'm bad at rituals. You should be struggling. Should I? He asked. Because from my perspective, you climbed up here, declared independence, and now look annoyed that I'm not freaking out. That hit closer than she liked. She shifted her weight again, more firmly this time. Not grinding. Not pressing. Just settling. In her culture, that was the moment. The line where the other party either accepted being beneath her or attempted to throw her off. A clean test. A final statement. He exhaled softly. Okay, fair warning, he said. If you stay there too long, circulation becomes a topic. What happens then? She challenged. My leg goes numb, he said. Then I walk funny. Then I complain. This was not dominance. This was logistics. Her confidence wavered, just a fraction. She'd expected defiance or surrender. Instead, she'd been given accommodation. Not indulgence. Not control. Accommodation implied equality, and that was a dangerous concept. You do not claim me, she said. Nope. You do not push me away. Nope. You do not ask permission. He paused at that, considering. Would you prefer that? Her mouth opened. Closed. That question wasn't in the script. No, she said too quickly. Then we're good, he replied, taking another sip of coffee. Though if this is symbolic, I should let you know I'm terrible at symbols. I once offended an entire family by sitting in the wrong chair. Her tale stilled. Around them, the situation metastasized. Security reports flagged the human as passively unyielding. Cultural specialists argued in real time. A memo circulated suggesting humans possessed a rare dominant style rooted in indifference rather than force. Someone coined the term comfort supremacy, which was immediately disputed. The Vulpine envoy felt heat rising beneath her fur, not from exertion but from something unfamiliar. Frustration, yes, but layered with something else. The steadiness beneath her. The way he didn't tense when she moved. The way he adjusted to her presence without trying to control it. You are not reacting correctly, she muttered. Story of my life, he said. She glared at him. If I were truly asserting control, you would feel diminished. He shrugged slightly. I've felt diminished by paperwork. This doesn't even rank. That did it. She huffed, a sharp sound of irritation, then surprised herself by laughing. Just once. Quiet. Unintended. The chamber nearly imploded. Laughter, from a Vulpine envoy, while seated on a human during an unresolved dominance exchange, was not covered in any existing protocol. She caught herself, posture snapping rigid again. Do not misunderstand, she warned. This position is of my choosing. Absolutely, he said easily. Your call. That was the moment she realized the trap. Not one he'd set intentionally, but one nonetheless. By refusing to name her action, by refusing to define it, he'd left the meaning entirely hers to carry. Choice without resistance felt dangerously close to freedom. Her people did not value freedom. They valued strength. And yet, she remained where she was. The human's data pad chimed softly, reminding him of an agenda item. He glanced at it, then back at the assembled delegates. So, he said, tone calm, unbothered, are we negotiating trade routes, or is this still considered foreplay in anyone's culture? Several translators overheated. The Vulpine envoy stiffened, then scoffed. You are insufferable. I've been told, he replied. Usually by people who keep sitting next to me. She looked away, ears flicking, tail curling once before settling again. Her weight stayed. Her claim held. But something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't proving dominance anymore. She was testing something else. And the galaxy, watching a human win a power struggle by doing absolutely nothing about it, quietly updated its threat assessments. The news traveled fast, faster than the station's intercom could handle. Analysts whispered, translators sputtered, and cultural liaisons began holding emergency meetings over the humans' peculiar behavior. Across the galaxy, someone was taking notes on a species that refused to yield, refused to react, and yet somehow remained completely harmless. The Vulpine envoy sat where she had chosen, tail neatly wrapped, eyes scanning the room with that sharp predatory edge. She was supposed to have submitted by now, but the human remained calm, legs crossed, coffee in hand, gaze mildly curious rather than alarmed. Her people would have expected flinching, bowing, or at least a subtle attempt at dominance. He had done none of these things. Nearby diplomats from the 3 neighboring systems were panicking quietly. Reports pinged back and forth. The human was being passively unmovable, emotionally neutral, and unexpectedly supportive. One minor species drafted a bulletin recommending that humans be categorized under psychologically dangerous, rather than diplomatically unpredictable. She leaned slightly forward, deliberate, testing, poking at the limits of human reaction. Every flick of her tail, every subtle shift in weight, was met with the same calm adjustment. He made micro-movements to stabilize the chair, repositioned his data pad, but never reacted the way a being was supposed to when physically challenged. She felt her own frustration rising, not because he had defeated her, but because he didn't engage at all. He ignored the ritual entirely, and that made her question the whole thing. "You are remarkably consistent for someone who is supposed to react," she said, a little breathless, but not enough to lose her composure. "Consistency is underrated," he replied. "Humans excel at mundane reliability. It's terrifying to other species." That earned a brief twitch of one ear from her. She couldn't decide if she was offended or impressed. She was a warrior trained in intimidation, someone whose presence could silence entire negotiation rooms. And yet here was a human, seated like a casual office worker, calm as a moonlit pond, and utterly unshaken by her tactics. "I should be making you feel subordinate," she muttered. "You're doing a fantastic job," he said, voice mild, almost conversational. "Though if your goal was intimidation, I'll rate it a solid 6 out of 10. Her ears twitched. "You do not understand the gravity of what I am attempting." "I understand enough to keep my spine straight and my coffee warm," he said. "Everything else seems optional." The room shifted subtly. Observers recorded everything. Some scribbled, some took notes on tablets, some debated what kind of military manual would even acknowledge this kind of human behavior. The Vulpine envoy's movement, meant to assert dominance, was instead being catalogued as a failed ritual, yet the human's non-reaction was being catalogued as success. He dominated without trying, led without speaking, and remained steady without claiming authority. She tapped a claw lightly on his arm, a small motion meant to provoke a reaction. The human adjusted his posture slightly, keeping the weight balanced, then nodded politely. "That was supposed to be provocative," she said. "It was," he said calmly. "And it was informative. I'll keep it in mind for the next meeting." She froze for a moment. Informative? Not uncomfortable? Not submission? He didn't care about the implied challenge. He didn't care about territory or ritual. He was a human, and humans apparently didn't respond the way predators expected. Somewhere in the back of the room, a senior cultural advisor whispered to a junior, "I think humans redefine dominance by indifference." The junior scribbled furiously. "Indifference is a strategy?" "Apparently." The Vulpine envoy huffed and leaned slightly more into his lap, testing again. Not aggressively, not provocatively, just claiming her space. She expected tension, resistance, a flinch, a groan. Anything. Nothing came. "You are impervious to customary pressure," she said, tone flat but increasingly incredulous. "Not impervious," he said. "I just measure pressure differently. Gravity is heavy, heat is hot, coffee is warm. Everything else is commentary." Her ears flattened, tail flicking with agitation. She tried a slow lean to simulate predatory intent. He tilted back to accommodate, keeping his balance, adjusting his wrist so the datapad stayed level. It was mechanical, calm, and utterly indifferent to the implied stakes. "You are supposed to challenge me," she muttered. "I challenge deadlines, bureaucracy, and bad coffee," he said. "You're not on the list." Her teeth clicked lightly, almost inaudible. The room shifted again. Observers debated if she had lost or if he had won by doing nothing at all. Her species measured success by reaction. His species measured success by calm. The result was chaos. "You are making this difficult," she said. He shrugged. "I'm good at difficult. Makes life interesting." She tapped lightly on his shoulder again, the tiniest motion meant to assert presence. He adjusted the datapad, leaned back just a touch, and smiled faintly. Nothing more. Nothing less. For the first time in her career, she realized she had no framework to interpret this. She was trained to dominate, to intimidate, to provoke. She had claimed a space, tested her opponent, and met peaceable indifference. And that made her feel something she did not expect: comfort. Not submission. Comfort. And the galaxy noticed. Reports pinged through every interstellar office. Humans are dangerous not because they attack, not because they intimidate, but because they make others act naturally around them. Predators, warriors, and diplomats alike were thrown into confusion. She stayed where she was, ears flicking, tail coiled neatly. The human returned to his datapad, sipped his coffee, and typed a note. Every small, mundane movement became a quiet act of command. She realized the dangerous truth: he never claimed her, never demanded her, never reacted, and yet in his refusal to participate in dominance, he had won entirely. Around the room, notes were taken. A new classification emerged: humans, emotionally unshakable. Dangerous in subtle, completely unquantifiable ways. She sighed softly, something close to frustration and amusement. "You are insufferable. Occupational hazard," he replied, smiling faintly. "And you're good at making me look attentive. I'll give you that." Her tail flicked once more. She remained where she was, testing, watching, learning. And the human, oblivious to the chaos, returned to work, sipping coffee like this was the most normal Tuesday in the galaxy. It wasn't normal. Not even close. And that was exactly why it worked. The ripple effect was immediate and unrelenting. Every species within a 10-meter radius had recalculated social hierarchies in real time. Analysts scribbled furiously, translating micro-expressions into potential threats. Diplomats whispered theories about humans, words like anchor, stabilizer, and comfort supremacy, bouncing across universal translators. Somewhere a junior officer suggested that humans might be the galaxy's most unpredictable species, a species whose calm was lethal in a way no weapon could match. The Vulpine envoy's tail twitched again, a subtle arc meant to indicate irritation, but her mind had moved ahead, analyzing the human's lack of reaction. Her species valued displays of power, subtle shifts in posture, and the silent language of proximity. Each of these had been carefully calibrated for centuries to assert dominance, provoke submission, or at least inspire unease. And yet here he was, seated like a mild-mannered bureaucrat, legs crossed, coffee in hand, utterly indifferent to her signals. "You do not react?" she said, her voice a mix of accusation and disbelief. "I react as necessary," he said. "Mostly to gravity, occasionally to bad coffee, sometimes to deadlines." "You're doing fine." She blinked. That should have been infuriating. It should have prompted a rebuttal or a push. Instead, she felt the faint pull of curiosity. The calm was disarming, as though he were a tidal force that ignored the rules of her universe. Nearby diplomats leaned closer, not to hear better, but to study this interaction like it was an endangered ritual. She shifted slightly, placing her weight more deliberately. In her species, the move signaled control, a test. He adjusted the angle of the datapad, making sure it remained level. That tiny motion was enough to destabilize lesser creatures, to provoke flinches. But he remained unmoved, attentive, steady. "You are making it impossible to assert dominance," she said. "I think you're doing fine." he replied. I just happened to be unbothered. That simple statement caused 3 observers to faint quietly. Someone translated the exchange incorrectly, suggesting the human was mocking the envoy. In reality, he had only been honest about his internal state. For a human, indifference was often an act of efficiency rather than disrespect. For a Vulpine warrior, it was a paradox that broke the spine of social expectation. She leaned in, closer this time, eyes narrowing, intent clear. Her tail flicked once, an unmistakable signal of predatory focus. The human tilted his head just slightly, enough to accommodate the weight, sipped coffee, and continued scrolling through his notes. His calm persistence created tension that no physical show of strength could. You are supposed to feel threatened, she muttered. I feel cozy, he said. Maybe a little warm. But not threatened. Her ears twitched in disbelief. This was a response she had not anticipated. Threatened, yes. Submission, yes. Confusion, occasionally. But comfort? Comfort was not part of the equation. And yet, somehow, he exuded a steady warmth that was impossible to resist. She bristled, frustrated that her carefully honed instincts had failed to elicit even a twitch of discomfort. Around them, whispers multiplied. Humans were now a study subject, a demonstration of an alternative dominance paradigm. Some analysts suggested that their presence alone shifted power dynamics. Others debated whether their method could be weaponized, conquer through calm, pacify through normalcy. All notes led to one universal conclusion: humans were unpredictable in a dangerous, subtle, and oddly comforting way. She shifted again, testing boundaries, adjusting her posture. He matched her shift effortlessly, accommodating without acknowledging, supporting without controlling. That simple interaction created a web of psychological tension that defied all conventions. She was in charge, but he was steady. She claimed space, but he remained unthreatened. She tested limits, but he created equilibrium. You are infuriating, she admitted, tail curling slightly. Thanks, he said, raising an eyebrow. I try. Usually works best with cats, occasionally with aliens. The room erupted into quiet chaos. Translators struggled. One delegate whispered, It's working. He's not reacting, and yet, he dominates. Another whispered, It's the comfort. The calm. It's lethal. She realized then that this was not a battle she could win in the traditional sense. Her assertions, her tests, her ritualistic movements, all of them had been neutralized by simple human indifference paired with subtle accommodation. He had not claimed her, not challenged her, not flinched, and yet he had asserted an unspoken authority simply by being steady, predictable, and present. You are different, she said finally, with a mixture of exasperation and reluctant admiration. That's the idea, he said. Humans specialize in making difficult things look easy. Her tail twitched one last time, a minor concession to her instincts. She had not lost, not entirely, but the rules had changed. The human had rewritten the expectations simply by existing in the way humans existed, calm, steady, indifferent, and unexpectedly commanding. Somewhere, a junior xenopsychologist added a note to the human dossier: extremely dangerous. Method: comfort. Effect: disarms predators and warriors alike. She stayed where she was, still perched, still claiming space, still asserting independence. He continued his work, sipping coffee and adjusting his datapad. Neither moved. Neither gave in. Yet both had achieved something extraordinary. The balance of power had shifted, subtly, unshakably, in favor of the human, without a single overt act of aggression. The galaxy watched. The galaxy recalculated. And the Vulpine envoy realized, with reluctant acceptance, that she had not been defeated. She had been outmaneuvered by stillness, by calm, by the quiet power of a human who refused to play the game by her rules.